Delighted to be here today to speak to you about what I think is an opportunity for our collective ICT sectors, and that's Cloud First and Marketplaces. I have a full agenda, but I typically go through these agenda items fairly quickly. So if you could reserve your questions till the end, you'll get the benefit of a flow of the presentation, okay? Just for your information, Branham Group is an Ottawa-based technology industry advisory. Our customers are almost exclusively 90% tech companies, 90%, 25% large, the remaining 75% small and medium-sized companies. We help our clients in the area of planning, marketing, partnering. At the end of the day, we really deliver tailored intelligence to our clients, and we leverage an expansive network to do that. And at the core of what we do is that we help companies achieve sales and marketing success. It's quite different than most management consulting companies that we would presumably compete with and so on, right? I do want to point out that our consultancy and advisory is quite different than most, because although we do the traditional management consulting advisory delivery, we also help companies with securing named accounts and sometimes partnerships and sometimes venture capital in the Canadian or North American marketplace. Now, I wanted to take this opportunity to give just a slight review a bit of a review about Canada, just to put it in perspective. Our countries are similar in terms of our ICT industry to a certain extent, but we're very different in other aspects. And I think it's useful to understand that. I mean, our government and political system it's a constitutional monarchy, and we have a parliamentary system, a bicameral system. Our total population is almost 38 million. The number of taxpayers, and this has relevancy in terms of the presentation, is 18.7 million, roughly. Our country, as you know, when you look at a map, is very, very large. We have 10 provinces and 3 territories. The territories are very much in the northern part of Canada, near the Arctic Sea. Our largest province is the province of Ontario. 14.1 million people are in that province. The second largest is Quebec, third being British Columbia, fourth Alberta, and fifth, I believe, is probably Nova Scotia in totality. We have very large metropolitan centers, by the way, and I'm using the metropolitan versus city because it's fairly expansive. Toronto is by far the largest. In fact, total population of Greater Toronto Area is 6.1 million. Montreal is second with roughly 4.5, and then Vancouver and Calgary are the next two. Ottawa, the city I live in, which is Canada's capital, is about cumulative 1.4 million. So the 65% of people in Canada live in 30 cities. So we're actually more urban than you think we are. There's 1,137 municipalities in Canada. Our gross domestic product is $1.6 trillion. The growth pre-COVID, and as you know, COVID is a very interesting situation now, was 1.9%, which in my personal opinion is actually slower than it really should be for a country of the caliber of Canada. Economists believe that post-COVID, somewhere in the year 2021, will achieve 5.2% growth. I don't know the inputs into that, but that's what they're thinking. Our economic model here is a market economy. Our major industries are 3: services, manufacturing, and natural resources. I think most people around the world would certainly perceive Canada to have a strong natural resource base because of our expansive of geography, but also our resources such as agriculture, fisheries, mining, energy, and so on, right? The The services group is, and this is not Branham's categorization, by the way, it's economists and government, but services is a fairly large bucket of organizations or companies. It includes transportation, economic services, healthcare, construction, banking, communication, retail, tourism, government, and the technology industry. Now, services accounts for 75% of the jobs in Canada and 78% of the GDP. So it's a very, very large sector. Compensation in this country, this may be a surprise to you, by the way, and this is data provided by one of our think tanks, Fraser Institute. The average public sector employee makes 11% more than the average private sector employee. I think that's a point that probably people don't understand, right? There's a number of reasons for that, which I don't want to get into, but public sector represents about 3 million people of the total 18.7 taxpayers. So as a segment of the industry, government is very, very big. And also we have significant trade agreements in place. We just, with the Trump government, negotiated the USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada, update of NAFTA. We have the comprehensive program with Europe. And of course, with Ukraine, we have a bilateral called CUFTA. I'm somewhat familiar with CUFTA, by the way, because of my work in Ukraine. About continuing on in terms of about Canada, technology adoption and investment on the supply side is, we believe, is average to being a laggard. Commercial operations spend a little bit more, but generally organizations do not adopt technology as fast as they should, and therefore we quite often find ourselves in negative competitive positioning as a result of it. We really do, as a nation and across companies and organizations, need to increase our spend in technology adoption. On the ICT supply side, the ICT sector itself, and that's the information communication technology industry, Canada is an emerging global leader. 25 to 30 years started Branham, Canada was not perceived to be a leader, but even back then, by the way, as a per capita spend on software, we were there. When I look at the domestic ICT sector, that sector that does not include global or foreign multinationals such as Microsoft and all the rest, the complexion is we are a country of largely small and medium-sized companies, but very, very innovative. We've been tracking this very closely through our Branham 300, as you know. Key areas of tech focus, but not exclusively. And these are horizontal foci, are cybersecurity, AI, artificial intelligence, and that includes, regenerative learning and machine learning and so on, digital health, cloud, and fintech. But this is not exclusive. There's a lot of intersection between those horizontal technologies, right? In Canada, Canada is actually one of the countries that has the largest base of startups. The various stakeholders in the ICT industry in Canada have spent a lot of time encouraging startups. But most recently, by the way, the country is also increasing their focus on making scale-ups more profitable and to generate more top-line revenue. So this is really important. The success rate, to a certain extent, of startups in Canada, despite the number of them, it can be as high as 90%. The unsuccessful rate. Sorry. Okay. Now, I wanted to get into some detail regarding the Branham ICT industry. So again, you have an understanding the depth and breadth of this. I won't spend too much time, but we produce the Branham 300 and have been doing so for 26 years. We launched it in 1993. it is perceived to be the #1 ranking, and we do so on gross revenue, and it includes both publicly traded companies on various stock exchanges, plus privately held firms, right? In that list, we track the top 250 Canadian technology companies, the top 25 Canadian technology up-and-comers, that's our term for startups, and the top 25 technology multinationals operating in Canada. And again, both publicly traded and privately held. We also segment this list in various segment or sector lists, and you can see them there, where we look at software companies, professional services companies, and so on, right down to analyzing growth companies. Now, in the last year that we produced the Branham 300, and that is in June 2019, we did not produce a list in June 2020 because of COVID. We are planning to do a combination of 2020 and 2021 in the coming fiscal year. But based on that data, which is the most accurate data in Canada, the gross revenues, the cumulative revenues of the top 250 Canadian companies grew by 9.6%. So it's almost five times the overall GDP growth. So it's a very healthy sector, and one that's looked upon for growth going forward, and sort of a key building block for Canada's right now reset renewal. Just to give you some order of magnitude comparison, the top 250 company, which is Bell, and they're a integrated ICT/telecom, they generate annual revenues of roughly $17 billion. The 250th company is 1.3. So you can see when you look at our list, we have some very large Canadian companies, and many of which you've heard of, such as Shopify and Constellation and so on. But the vast majority are small firms in that small to medium-sized range, right? I encourage you to go to our website at branhamgroup.com or branham300.com to look at current or previous lists. Now, we do have strong, as Ukraine does, we do have strong involvement and support from multinationals, foreign multinationals, non-Canadian. Their growth has been very good as well. In fact, better than the top 250 Canadian domestic, and achieving rates of just over 12% growth. Now, there's a reason why they're doing well in Canada, because as I'll mention later on in the presentation, they're large, they have infinitely more resources to go after sales and marketing opportunities, right? And of course, they have brand recognition. You know, the old adage, you were never fired if you hired IBM, is true for you're never fired if you hire Microsoft or Google or Amazon and so on, right? So Canadian domestic companies are challenged by, you know, competing with more larger companies, foreign multinationals that have more resources. So if you recall, and this is a focus on startups within Ukraine. Every year, we identify 25 companies that we, as Branham, think will do really well. And you can see this listing on our website if you wish, but these are some of them. Most of these are outside the GTA, by the way. So, and that's the Greater Toronto area. And Toronto, without a question, and Southwestern Ontario is the major epicenter of Canada's ICT sector, although there's strong pockets of that in Montreal, Vancouver, Ottawa, and others. But this list actually, surprisingly, contains 75% of companies that are outside those greater metropolitan areas, which gives you a pretty good idea of the depth and breadth of the Canadian ICT sector. Some of these companies, by the way, are using resources not only in the Ukraine or in Ukraine, but also other countries in Europe for software development services. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a game changer. I think we'll all agree. In little more than 9 months of the pandemic, the narrative is dramatically different. Countries, governments, businesses, and people are pivoting, and their step is faster. I see, and I've observed in Canada, that things are moving almost at light speed compared to what happened in the last 20 years. So you come to the quick conclusion that when we want to, we can move quickly and do the job. In the delivery, I guess, of the first vaccine in the UK is representative of how quickly countries and companies can work together to do something when there's the will to do so. Now, there are some bad things about COVID, and I'll state them because I think you read about them every day, but they have implications for Canada and the rest of the world. Canada was not prepared for this. No pandemic strategy or plan was in place. And for those that remember SARS epidemic in, I think, the year 2003, the citizens of Canada were told that based on that notorious epidemic, we would have a proactive preparedness strategy in place. We do not. So it's fair to say that all governments were reactive rather than proactive. There's been a lack of cohesive decision-making between governments and public health authorities. And it has hit small and medium-sized businesses very, very hard, both B2C, which retail, hospitality sector that you see every day, the restaurants and so on. But it has also hit small and medium-sized B2B class organizations as well. Those that are trying to work from their homes and trying to generate revenue. What COVID has done is, for a period of time over the 9 months, encourage people to hide behind that challenge and not spend money, which is not a good idea. So as a result, people have died in our country, and some businesses have been totally obliterated. And the debt level now is very concerning. You can't ignore it, right, going forward. Now, the good is that it has exposed weak domestic supply chains, impacting Canada's ability to deliver pandemics and in global threats. So it's exposed dependencies on other countries. I don't want to name specific countries, but in the case of pharmaceuticals, we have 80% of our pharmaceuticals coming from one very large East Asian country. That's very concerning, because if there's any geopolitical concerns, you know, that delivery mechanism can be turned off. So it's been a wake-up call for Canada. And so it's identified the need for a pandemic preparedness strategy. And it's identified the need to buy more domestic goods and services as well. And this has implications for the information technology industry. Now, it has also accelerated the adoption of technology, created a demand for more expansive broadband networks enabling urban to rural migration. And at that point, by the way, people in Canada, as I mentioned, you know, the lion's share live in 30 cities, are starting a small percentage, but a growing percentage are thinking about moving to other locations to remove themselves from the density of large city environments and the implications for health. It's increased the need for digital transformation to develop more expanded digital services, and you're seeing this at all levels of the government. It has encouraged roboticization. Many know that advanced G7, G8, G20 countries like Canada, their cost base relative to labor is prohibitive, and we've outsourced a lot of our manufacturing, traditional manufacturing with traditional manufacturing methodologies to other countries. Now we're seeing a move towards the use of robots in those facilities, and there's a rebound in terms of the manufacturing area, which should not have an implication for inflation going forward, because when you shift, you know, stuff like this back into an economy that has high labor rates, then there can be an inflationary kind of impact, and I don't think there will be, given roboticization. It has also added more value to data as a currency and cloud first as a modus operandi for curation, storage, and delivery. Now, what does this mean for Ukraine and Canada's respective tech sectors? I'm going to suggest to you there's a huge opportunity, a tech-enabled reset of the role of government. We are potentially heading into a less integrated society due to forthcoming repatriation of supply chains, combined with reduced foreign direct investment and reduced labor migration. Effectively, we are moving into a neo-isolationist period. And that's not only our prediction, but the prediction of many mainline banks and think tank organizations. We are likely heading into a period that may see a contraction of government as we know it today. The reliance on government started before COVID-19, but it has accelerated during the pandemic to provide financial support to households and businesses. So let me give you an example just in that second point when I talk about government involvement. The government involvement from the ICT sector has been immense. Extraordinary programs providing capital and support to building out technology companies and others, to a point where businesses that are looking at hiring firms like ours ask us whether we have the ability to secure government funding to hire our services. And this is very concerning in a market economy, right? So we've also, the reliance on government is there before COVID-19, but it's also accelerated during the pandemic, providing necessary support to households and businesses. This has created debt levels, as you know, that have never been imagined before. So there is concern worldwide by citizens regarding how the debt will be repaid while maintaining government services. This during a period in which government will become smaller and likely will readopt its historical role in developing good policy to support the private sector to succeed. The cost of government may well no longer be sustainable, certainly not in Canada. I'm by academic training, by the way, I'm a political economist, and what is not known in amongst the average person is for a public sector person does not make a net contribution to revenue in the government. They deliver value for being paid, but they don't contribute a net contribution. The private sector does. So part of the reset that has to happen is utilizing the sector to generate more revenue going forward. So in Canada, all three levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, employ approximately 3 million people, or 16% of the taxpayers. Government historically has been a laggard in technology adoption. Challenging procurement policies and processes have been discouraged and have discouraged innovative small, medium-sized businesses from selling to the sector. And at the same time, governments have elected to build large IT capabilities internally to develop application. This is no longer sustainable. Reportedly, in our Canadian federal government, there are 18,000 applications. Greater than 50% have been developed internally rather than procuring commercially available COTS software. Only 1% of these applications are cloud-based. This has created a large cadre of internal IT personnel. The ratio of IT personnel to employees is 1.4. So effectively, you could determine that 20% of government personnel costs are allocated to IT. That's not even close to commercial ratios of 1 to 50. There are comparable metrics for the provincial and municipal governments as well. Collectively, we are not benefiting from the efficiencies associated with cloud-based technology. Now, not to sound dramatically critical, I was just stating the facts, but the Canadian federal government does recognize that this has to change. They have embraced a cloud-first plan, and they are communicating very strongly that they want to digitally transform its operation, deliver more digital services. They have launched a major program to create Sas Marketplaces to encourage the procurement of applications from the IT sector directly. They also want to produce SaaS app solutions that can assist in migrating existing apps to the cloud, or if needed, conducting a greenfield redeployment of these applications. So with the marketplace, the old procurement processes and price ceilings are going to change. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, it is a change management strategy in the works, even though it's not identified as that. Effectively, they want to create a smartphone app store like we manage ourselves, but for enterprise scale SaaS apps that can be purchased with the press of a computer key. The cost of entry is being reduced to accommodate more opportunity for small and medium-sized technology companies. And this is not limited to only domestic. The marketplaces are actually ingesting organizations from other countries. This will create a level playing field with larger global brands who have always had the human and financial resources to operate in the government. The government market accounts for 25% of the total IT spend in Canada. Now remember, 1 out of 18,000 apps are cloud-based. We cannot, as a country, position ourselves as an organization, as a country that in the government sector has embraced cloud technology. We're very, very far behind, ladies and gentlemen. And that in itself creates an opportunity. So what does this mean for Ukraine and Canada's respective tech sectors? Now, one of my objectives in delivering this presentation was to submit a call to action to Ukrainian technology companies, startups and scale-ups, that there's an opportunity to collaborate with Canadian companies. There's an opportunity to actually come on board these emerging SaaS, cloud-based SaaS marketplaces as a external opportunity for you and meeting a domestic requirement that we have. It's actually one of the many opportunities where Ukrainian and Canadian companies can leverage the CUFTA agreement and our close relationship as countries to generate revenue associated with cloud first and marketplaces. Now, in the interest of transparency, I do want to tell you this. There are 8 SaaS marketplaces in Canada. One is driven by a Canadian domestic firm, and the other 7 by all the big firms you hear about every day. Those 7 firms, by the way, account for a large, more than large percentage of that annual government spend on IT. So the Canadian organization, and we're helping them because we help small, medium-sized companies with sales and marketing initiatives, is a company called Think On. And we're helping them ingest and onboard technology companies into those marketplaces. And most recently, we've launched and brought on board several European and a few US, but small, medium-sized SaaS players, in addition to Canadian domestic SaaS players. A lot of this is going to be announced in the next 1 to 3 months. So I wanted to share this opportunity with you, and I'm open for any kind of reach out to explain this a little bit more if there's interested on the part of Ukrainian startups and scale-ups, because I think there is a huge opportunity where we can work together and build core applications on marketplaces around the world. Now, our client on this, by the way, is positioning itself for delivering their marketplace in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Bahamas, United States, in addition to Canada. And so they have taken the mantle of promoting small, medium-sized enterprises, not only in Canada, but worldwide. And there's a tremendous opportunity here for companies in that class. Now, having said that, I should tell you that one of the largest privately held firms, US-based firms, generating multi-billion dollars in software, has moved their application from a Microsoft Azure platform to the Think On Compass platform for a major government requirement, and that's being procured through the marketplace. So my goal here was to not only talk about and answer questions, which I'm going to do now, about the state of scale-ups and startups in Canada, marketing strategies and that kind of stuff. There's a series of questions, but I actually wanted to reach out to you with a very defined opportunity where we can actually do real business together. And that, at the end of the day, is the core. I thank you for the time for allowing me to share this with you and present an opportunity. And I'm open to any questions. In fact, there were 4 or 5 questions sent to me by Svetlana, and I'd be delighted to answer some of those. Okay.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. And as Mr. Gudbranson already said, now we will speak about questions. We will ask questions which our participants asked and in which they're really interested. So the first one, can you tell us about marketing strategies for startups that are in stage of development?
Okay, so may I call you Mary?
Yes, of course.
Okay, thanks. Mary, thanks for pronouncing my last name so well. I'm not too sure whether I could do the same with yours. I need to get more familiar with pronouncing Ukrainian names, but marketing strategies for startups is a very interesting one. Okay. So this is based on 30 years of experience in the industry. The major challenge for startups, and I don't think it's dramatically different today, is someone has a great idea to build an application that they perceive the marketplace or customers will buy it. I don't think startups do a great job of actually understanding the market dynamics and the demand for what they're thinking of building. So we often with startups promote sort of an industrial relationship, and that is secure the interest of a customer to help you develop a product that has wide appeal across the sector. Now, I'm not saying your companies don't do that. I'm sure they do, but we fundamentally believe that if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business, right? You may have a nice office and you may be well funded by investors who have entrusted their money into you to develop. But if you don't have a customer, to a certain extent, you don't have a business. So when you say marketing strategies for startups that are in a stage of development, I would say secure a customer, even if it's a non-revenue generating customer, to help you build your vision of that product. And I think customers are so important. Historically, by the way, before the NAFTA free trade agreement we have here in the United States, our government could buy technology from small companies, and that procurement dollar would provide not only a named account, but also money for that company to succeed, right? I don't think startups today have the same vision about building relationships with customers first, and sometimes are so involved emotionally in what they're trying to achieve that they forget that they have to get a customer. So I would get a customer.
Thank you so much for answering our first question. And the second one about marketplaces. Basic ideas on how to organize them and basic markets and important steps in this way.
Okay, so marketplaces are emerging as a pivotal strategy or modus operandi for channel development. You know, the traditional methodology was to look at resellers to sell a product of yours or solution, or to go through an OEM type relationship and target that one player and put together an exclusivity arrangement. There has to be an omni-channel marketing strategy for startups today, much more than it was when I started off in this industry. You have to be very cunning and expansive about what you're doing. And so marketplaces, effectively, in the context of Sas Marketplaces, these marketplaces give you maximum brand awareness and minimal investment from a channel development strategy. It really does. And so I like those SaaS marketplaces, and they're only going to increase in utility. Now, if you're looking at marketplaces from the point of view of target markets, I believe you have to do some strategic looking around the world where your technologies apply in terms of doing your total addressable market design, understanding what the growth rates are, where are the leading industries, where you fit, doing your competitive analysis. So you need to do all that baseline, market entry strategy and pick one or two. The biggest mistake that people can do is, I completely understand the cloud and SaaS-based model and the social media utilization to achieve global brand recognition right away. But I still believe it's fundamental that you have a very defined value proposition and you secure a higher percentage of a target market in a geographic market, and then you can build from there. So I hope that was not so obtuse, but understandable from my side.
Yes, and thank you so much for answering this question. And it is known fact that industrial artificial intelligence adoption is it's in its embryo. It is about black box nature, unreliability, or something else.
All right, the conversation regards artificial intelligence. Mary, you've opened up such a long discussion, but here I'm going to give you my current feeling in a summary level. All right.
Okay. Yes.
I think the average buyer thinks that artificial intelligence, AI technology, is fundamentally the holy grail. That all I have to do is install, and everything's going to start producing out, repetitive learning tasks and do it very easily. Now we see it on a day-to-day basis in every tool that we use, right? But in fact, initially setting up and utilizing AI technology has a lot to making sure that the data that you want to use that tool with is normalized and curated. If you have bad data, AI doesn't work, right? Because it needs to learn from successive utilization and of that data to actually perform, to develop machine learning. So I think people underestimate the challenge of utilizing AI because there is a serious labor-intensive component of normalizing the data that you must use to fundamentally use AI technology. Now, the other point is that if you're not using and not moving towards AI technology, you are completely obsolete in months, not years. So you have to adopt an AI strategy. In fact, in your marketing collateral, you have to talk about the fact that even though you may not be doing it, that you are, utilizing and looking at and researching AI. You simply have to do it.
Yes, that's really interesting topic, and it can become huge conversation. But now we are going through this, and about the next question. Can you tell us about scaling the marketplace to world market?
Yes, and in fact, the example of our current client, ThinkOn, and that's the word think and on together, ThinkOn, is an exactly example of that, by the way. They're building a marketplace of SaaS applications, both domestic Canadian and worldwide, for deployment to the government sector in Canada. But they're also going to provision that in commercial marketplaces, because most of the applications that are in the government, SaaS marketplace are actually straightforward business applications that can be deployed in any commercial environment. So they are now are going to proliferate those marketplaces in the areas of UK, New Zealand, Australia, and United States, and the Bahamas, right? So you have to, so a marketplace can be scaled to world markets. You as a startup have to identify which marketplaces are doing a good job of scaling that up. It's the other thing about marketplace is this. Major multinationals that we know about, that I've mentioned, by the way, have extraordinary networks and repositories of resellers, hundreds of thousands of companies, right? Just imagine a buyer. How difficult would it be to parse through 100,000 plus organizations to find a content management system for your business and come across 2,000? What do you do from there? You know, do you have the time to actually look at all 2,000? Do you have the time to research it? So when you want to look at marketplaces which provide some element of exclusivity for your brand, that it's distinctly there. So for instance, example, there's a very successful, you know, US workflow product, right? We all know who they are, fairly large, right? In the marketplace that we've helped build with Think On, we've identified a Canadian player that nobody knows about, but has been highly successful in the marketplace, right? So we're taking that product as a competitor to that large foreign multinational, right? So you got to find a way where you can set yourself apart on these marketplaces, right? Being one of a marketplace of 100,000 plus organizations is daunting for the buyer and probably not all that useful as a supplier, right?
Yeah, that's true. And the next question is also really practical. How to use image advertising at the stage of starting a business, through which communication channels, and whether it is needed at all. Regionality of business, for example, Kyiv, and is it possible to reject the image in favor of product advertising if the marketing budget is very limited? And the first one, it was through which communication channels we should use image advertising. Yeah.
Boy, Mary, this is a massive topic.
Yes.
It's a massive topic. So I'm going to give you once again an initial response to this, right? On a limited marketing budget, I think what you have to do is first of all, understand the specific segment or sub-segment of the industrial base that you want to go after as a market. So please do not try to be all things to all people. Go after a specific vertical industry or geographic marketplace and focus on that to achieve some track record of success in the marketplace. Now, the other thing I would highly encourage companies to do is use market research, intelligence gathering as a methodology to get to the buyers on a very targeted basis. We happen to do that in Branham a ton. And, you know, it doesn't have to be 1,000 companies. You go after 25 to 100 companies that you really want to get inside and use people that you know out there that can get you inside there to build that base of customers, right? There's nothing more, Mary, better than putting up in your website that I secured Johnson & Johnson. Doesn't matter how much money you're generating. And in fact, it could be completely a free account because you just want to get inside and use their brand as a customer, right? But it's targeting. You only have so much time, you only have so much budget. So if on a limited budget, by the way, I would certainly have a website and appeal to the world out there and talk about the position, your value proposition and the target industries you're going after. But the real thing you have to do is use market research, tactical market research to get inside potential customers to build that customer base. And it can't be one. Once you get up to 5 or 6 impressive companies, that'd be great. So for instance, we have a client that has a RAD tool, application development tool, and they were completely floundering. They would say that we're a tracking solution for anything that needs tracking. Well, just imagine how well that goes. So we've helped them refit their positioning to being a RAD tool in cybersecurity compliance, because cybersecurity, as I mentioned in my presentation, is extremely hot. Tons of money, for anything to do with cybersecurity, right? And they have this small Canadian company has the European Space Agency as an account, Johnson & Johnson, the Professional Golf Association of the world, right? So some very impressive accounts, but they've never leveraged that. We help them to repackage those whole messaging and target in similar accounts going forward, right? So it's a process of sharing the message socially, and there's all the social media. There's LinkedIn is wonderful, right? Video logs are great. I think target interviews with said organizations. There's a lot you can do from social media, right? But remember, social media is jammed these days, right? How are you going to set yourself apart up there? And I think what your mandate clearly is as a startup to go in there and get customers and have a broader branding message through your website.
That's absolutely true, and thank you for answering the questions. And that's a pity, but that's all. We are grateful for your time. We thank you for your time, for your presentation, and we appreciate that you're with us. So thank you for your presentation. That's all, and I hope that we will have such opportunity to have such presentation in some time.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's really a privilege and an honor to be here today with you. I love the country of Ukraine. I think it's fabulous. I'm going to share this as the last point, by the way. I spent a lot of time. I met 50 Ukrainian organizations, both solution and services organization, from your very largest to some of your very small, in Lviv and Kyiv. I've only been to those two locations, by the way. This is my take, by the way, is pound for pound, the unit of output and work ethic of a Ukrainian software developer is 40 to 50% greater than the average Canadian developer.
Wow.
And it is.
Interesting statistic.
It is, by the way. When you get to a well-developed democratic country, by the way, sometimes a little bit of laziness starts to creep into society, right? And the work ethic is not there as much as you'd like to see it there, right? So I am suitably impressed with Ukrainian technology companies because I think they're just marvelous, and we do whatever we can to introduce opportunities there.